Hi, everyone. So I'll conclude the morning with this 5-minute shop talk. And I have to say, I'm not sure what I was thinking by volunteering to follow such a powerhouse group of curators and scholars, but I'll give it my best shot. My name is Devin Bella, and I'm a curator based in San Francisco. I'm also directing a small-scale independent institution called Catist, which was originally founded in Paris, but then opened up a space 5 years later in 2011 in San Francisco. It's a collecting and presenting institution, and its collection aims to reflect the global scope of contemporary art, and its programs are aimed at creating a vibrant conversation about important issues, often using works as a kind of vehicle to do so, engaging with our audiences. For the shop talk, most of you probably already know that we were invited to present a display solution to a specific artwork that we recently presented at our own institution, and to talk about how this presentation impacts viewing, or in my case, experiencing, not exclusively viewing, through sight and interpretation. And so I'd like to, here, show an image. I don't know how well you can see that. Is it registering? So for this shop talk, I'll be highlighting my recent work exhibiting F&F, Face and Fingers, which is a series of photographs that document a live performance by artist Mo Sat. And the artwork itself consists of 8 photographs that tightly frame the artist's face, which you'll see in another image, and they as he makes a series of hand gestures in relation and close proximities to his face, and you'll see that in one of the images. And below each photograph, or below each frame of his face, there's a small text that describes the image and the meaning behind the hand gesture. In the original performance, he moves through a series of over 100 hand gestures. And so the work that I was presenting was only a small selection of those gestures. And in the performance, and I'm sorry that I just only have a still here, he's navigating his way through a crowd who is often seated on the floor, and he invites them to participate in this series of gestures, to move as he does. And the photographs only capture a very small selection of these gestures. And so for this presentation at Catist, we presented the 8 photographs, and we created an experimental audio guide with my co-curator and artist collaborator, Fayen Devi. And the audio attempts to guide the audience mentally, visually, and haptically through the 8 photographs. So you're no longer being a passive viewer, but in fact you're prompted to interact with the images, mimicking his movements. And we did this by layering verbal description, also known as audio description or audio imaging, what's in the image, and with text. There were original written accounts of the performance that we found online and various sources in catalogs. He's been doing this performance since 2008, so it's an ongoing work, so there were a lot of things that we could pull from, and we layered that with choreographic prompts. And, yeah, okay. But the background of this project, which I should mention, is the culmination of a year-long inquiry into blindness as a critical position and a generative methodological principle. And it was developed in close conversation with Devi, who I mentioned earlier, and writer and professor Georgina Klieg. She teaches at UC Berkeley, and she's a creative nonfiction writer. She also writes about disability and writes about visual art and is blind. And over the course of the year, through events that we organized together, workshops, discussions that we had both publicly and professionally in small groups, the inquiry led to rethinking, maybe even radicalizing certain modes of accessibility, such as the touch tour, in addition to the audio guide, toward new relationships between art and its audiences. So by presenting this work today, my ultimate goal is to position within the process of mediation, audio description, and audio guides as an underexplored medium for curatorial practice, and starting with the documentation of ephemeral performance. And so here in the next slide, you see actually my hands as they're over the image, and the way that we worked with these images, we actually practiced the movement. And then my collaborator, Fayin, was actually reading the description of what it says in the text below. And I should say that, our position that kind of culminated through this project was a kind of reflection of an understanding or expanded understanding of audio guides as propositions for embodied listening, movement improvisation, and multi-sensory encounters with artworks and exhibitions. So in this last image, here's the final presentation of the work. You'll see 3 out of the 8 images on the wall. We invited a small group to conduct the audio guide or participate in the audio guide. And what you don't see, or rather what you don't hear, is the actual audio file. It's a 15-minute file, so I wouldn't have time to do that now, but if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share that. And so just wrapping up this 5-minute talk, I'd like to just maybe present 2 key arguments or opinions or positions that kind of evolved during our work together. And that's one being that the industry standards for audio description we think are founded on a problematic presumption of objectivity and prescribe a kind of emotional detachment and neutrality. And this was really kind of backed up by Klieg, who often relies on audio guides and audio description as she encounters museum context, that she's often left with the kind of yearning for what someone's reaction is to a work, rather than just what someone solely sees. And then secondly, that the audio guide situation can be grounded in several key sensory modalities, deploying both the external and internal senses. So external being visual or sight, the auditory being or hearing, and the tactive or touch. And the internal senses, for example, the proprioceptive, balance or limb position, the kinesthetic, such as movement-related efforts or acceleration, moving closer, farther away. Audio guides, they can do these things, but often they do not combine several of these senses. And so in closing, I think that I just would like to kind of plant that seed and this is kind of a nice counterpart to the session that Amanda led yesterday, about access and ableism and disability, that approaches a medium for heightening attentiveness. The audio guide can offer, it can be a new proposition for navigating interactions with works or pathways in and around exhibition spaces. So, thank you.